Hello, my name is Laura Irving, and this week I furthered my investigation of civil rights in the South by reviewing 3 articles to increase my knowledge. All 3 articles explained the ways in which African Americans were involved in politics in the South. I will review the sources in each article, the methods used to obtain the information, and finally the content of the articles. The first article is by Lee Formwalt. He used a myriad of sources to explain African American politics in Southwest Georgia from 1876 to 1867. The primary sources he used were the Yancey Papers, Petition of Planters, Albany Patriot newspaper, letters from Cooper to Yancey, and from Colquitt to O.H. Howard. The inclusion of different types of primary sources creates a background to help ensure interesting and persuasive arguments. The secondary sources Formwalt used in his articles, the Journal of Southwest Georgia. He wrote about the facts of Reconstruction, the Carpetbagger's Conscience, and the Loyal Georgian. Formwalt used qualitative methods to explain how African Americans became involved in politics in Southwest. He focused on the Dougherty County, Albany area. Formwalt wrote about how politics in the Southwest were formed after the Civil War. He clarified how African Americans did not receive the help they desired by the Freedmen's Bureau, and instead they took control of their own lives and exercised their liberty in a number of ways. The second article was by Christopher Burrell. He wrote about the future perspectives of the civil rights movement. His sources included speeches by Malcolm X, writings and articles found in Washington, D.C. at the Library of Congress about civil rights, the March on Washington, and newspaper articles. His secondary sources include The Messenger's Rise and the Fall of Elijah, G.S. Schuler and J. Dowd Hall, and he used the qualitative method of predictive analysis. His focus on the ideological perspectives of the future of civil rights movement from 1964 to 1966. Most histories written about the civil rights portrays only 2 ideologies, but Burrell writes that there were not 2, but 4. And the 4 types were Schuler's conservatism, Malcolm X's black nationalism, Clark's racial liberalism, and Bayard Rustin's socialism. His article provides the context of each of these viewpoints in discussing the civil rights struggle. The third article by Catherine Tate wrote about the Voting Rights Act and its reauthorization. She included numerous primary sources by the House of Representatives by Charles Rangel, the congressional records, newspaper articles from the New York Times, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitutions. The secondary sources she selected were by Chandler Davidson about voting rights laws, Ronald Waters, and Roland Martin in his writing about Bush and the Voting Rights Act. Her methodology was qualitative analysis examining the African American politics, the GOP strategy, and the reauthorization of voting rights acts. Her content explained the way in which she believed the GOP leaders reacted to the voting rights legislation in 2006 in comparison to the Voting Rights Act of 1982. Tate explained how the GOP did not challenge the Voting Rights Act. She believed that the GOP refused to argue against the Voting Rights Act because African Americans would mobilize them against them, and therefore they did not want that to happen. She also stated that she believed it was a ploy to ensure African Americans remained in the GOP. In conclusion, the way in which African Americans engaged in politics from the Civil War as liberating themselves from ideas and perspectives displayed during the civil rights and all the way to the Voting Rights Act and legislation of 2006 is diverse. I need to further investigate this and learn and have additional research to gain adequate knowledge to create a historiography of what is happening throughout history. Thank you.